All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us this morning for the Property Management Task Force. We kindly ask you that if you're not speaking, that you please mute yourself. We are going to open it up for Q&A towards the end. I'm going to do my best to monitor the chat. If there are any questions that go with what Cindy is covering in the moment, go ahead and put it on the chat, and I'll go ahead and ask those questions for you. So let's get started. Our guest speaker this morning is Cindy Huey with the Housing Authority of the County of Riverside. A little bit about Cindy. She is a Principal Development Specialist for the Housing Authority of the County of Riverside since 2007, a department of the county's Economic Development Agency. Ms. Huey is currently the Program Manager for the Housing Choice Voucher Program, and over the last 21 years, she has served in various capacities at the Housing Authority, such as a Family Self-Sufficiency Coordinator and a Housing Specialist determining eligibility for new participants off the waiting list, as well as continued eligibility for program participants. Thank you, Cindy, for being here today. This is the second time that she's joining us, and she always has wonderful and valuable information to share. So Cindy, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Sylvia. Hello, everyone. Good morning. Hope everyone's doing well. Sylvia had reached out and asked that I provide a little update about what the Housing Authority has done since COVID-19 and the pandemic. So I did provide a brief overview. The county issued that all county offices would close our doors to the public. So our office has been closed to the public since March 17th, and we're awaiting further directions from the county's administration to let us know how we can start reopening our lobbies. So hopefully, because it has been difficult. We've only been able to conduct our business by phone and through the mail and through emails. We're also not sending any of our staff out to conduct annual inspections. HUD had issued a bunch of waivers when COVID-19 hit. So one of the waivers we received was that we did not have to conduct yearly inspections. So we've chosen not to do that. And we have hired an outside vendor who is conducting all our new move-in inspections so that our voucher families can still continue to be housed. Some of our staff is telecommuting part of the week. That will reduce the number of people we have in our office to allow for distancing. And I mentioned the waivers that HUD did provide. Mainly HUD's waivers is, the goal of those waivers was to keep families housed and allow for landlords to continue to be paid. So that's why we still continue to operate our business the way we do. For staff that are working in the office, facial coverings are required and to be worn at all times. Of course, if they're having breaks or lunches, we allow them to take those off, but we did encourage them to maintain the distancing. And as of April 20th, we have implemented an employee health screening protocol. Before any employees can enter the building, they must answer 4 questions relating to whether or not they are ill, have anyone at home that's ill, do they have any new or worsening symptoms that are related to COVID-19. If all the answers are no, then they're granted entry. If any of our staff answers yes to any of the 4 questions, we contact the occupational health nurse to receive further guidance. The plan is when our office lobbies does reopen, we're going to continue the screening for the outside public. If they're not well, they're not going to be granted access into our lobby. And facial coverings will be required. On March 16th, Governor Newsom did issue an executive order that authorizes local governments to halt evictions for renters and homeowners, slows the foreclosure, and protects against utility shutoffs for Californians affected by COVID-19. So in reading the governor's executive order, which he did extend through July 28th of this year, it only covers for non-payment of rent. If your tenants are not able to make any rental payments, the executive order prevents landlords from filing any evictions for non-payment of rent. HUD went a little further in stating that if your properties receive any federal funding, like our Housing Choice Voucher Assistance, not only can you not serve them with notices and evict them for non-payment of rent, but you shouldn't be charging them with late fees as well. All these are found on HUD's website as well as the state's website. And I think when I emailed this to you earlier, Sylvia, it was before I found out that the executive order was extended. So my comment says that the executive order is in place through May 31st. It's actually through July 28th now. And when HUD enacted the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security CARES Act on March 27th, I had mentioned this, it prevents evictions, and it put a moratorium on any of our public housing programs, Section 8 voucher program, project-based voucher program, the mod rehab program, as well as programs administered by the Office of Public and Indian Housing. So I think at this point, those are all the updates that I had. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Cindy. Does anybody have any questions? You can go ahead and unmute yourself. You can raise your hand and I'll call on your name. And if you don't know how to use the hand feature, you can go ahead and, can we have the speaker's contact information? Cindy, is it okay to share your information on here? Your email? Okay. What is the email?
My email is chui@rivco, R-I-V as in Victor, co.org. Actually, it looks like I can type.
Okay. And there is a question on here from Brenda Barajas. Are we able to serve termination notices?
Yeah, at least the CARES Act says that you can still serve you're talking about 30-day notices to vacate, correct?
Brenda, if you want to unmute, you can go ahead and clarify that for Cindy.
Yeah, 30 and 60 days. If any of them are Housing Choice Voucher participants, our regulation states that if they've been in residence for a year or more, it requires a 90-day advance notice. For any other rentals that's not covered by our federal assisted program, then a 30-day is sufficient.
Thank you. We have a question here from Joan Lucas. If a lease is ending, can we send a notice of intent to not renew?
I believe so, yes. There's nothing in the moratorium, the eviction moratorium, that prevents that from occurring.
All right. Anybody else, any questions for Cindy?
Just to follow up to that question, I would just note that, during these very trying times, be as upfront with your residents as possible. If you know you're not going to be renewed, always giving more notice is better than shorter notice, because it will give them the opportunity to hopefully find another unit to relocate to. We've heard from our own voucher participants that even today, 2.5, almost 3 months into the governor's order, there are still some landlords out there that are not willing to show their property. So rentals are a little scarce right now, and it's more difficult.
Okay, there was a comment from Joan saying tenant claimed the CARES Act prevented the notice. So thank you for clarifying. And go ahead, whoever had the question.
Hi, this is Garen. So my question is, I think you kind of clarified this, but I want to make sure, but I have a tenant that has not paid any rent since April. He has not communicated with us at all, nothing about COVID or anything. We did post the 3-day notice because we've been trying to communicate, giving him letters, everything, and still nothing. So we did post the notice because we were going to start that eviction process, even though there's no courts and things right now. So we're going to do that. We just posted it on June 5th. So as of technically today, it's up, and we were going to start the process tomorrow. So you're saying we can't do that?
Well, if I'm reading the CARES Act, the CARES Act covers our rental assistance program. In the governor's executive order, it did put a moratorium on evictions for non-payment of rent. Now, however, the governor did issue guidance that for any tenants that are unable to pay rent, it gave specific guidance that they had to notify their landlord in writing, letting them know the exact reasons why they're not be able to pay rent. And it also doesn't relieve them of the responsibility to pay the unpaid rent once they are able to.
Okay. Yeah. So no, he hasn't communicated at all. Nothing.
Yeah,
And
so
we know he's there.
Yeah, just to protect yourself, you like you said, the courts are closed. You can try to file for your eviction, but at least you're putting everything in process so that in the event when the courts do open back up, you can clearly communicate with the judge how you have tried to reach out to your tenant.
Okay, perfect. Yep. All right. Yeah, we've talked to the attorneys. I'm just waiting to hear back from them too. So you just answered my question. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. There's a comment here from Debbie Chilson. Debbie, do you want to read your question or mention your question to Cindy? Oh, she has a microphone, so I'll read it. It says the Judicial Council has their own emergency order stating no summons will be issued and no defaults will be entered for 90 days after the governor's order expires. Even though you are stating a termination notice can be served, I don't believe the courts will file any eviction paperwork regardless of the reason. Can you address this?
Well, remember, giving a notice to terminate your rental agreement isn't an eviction. If I would go with the Judicial Council's emergency order, it sounds like you can still serve your notices. They're just not going to enter any judgments or file anything until 90 days after the governor's order expires. And currently, the governor's order expires on July 28th. And again, this is my interpretation of it. I haven't sat down with our legal counsel. I'm applying what I'm reading through the CARES Act and the governor's executive order, and that's how the Housing Authority is handling our participants' files. I have had landlords that have given their tenants notice to move. We have honored them by, doing what we need to do to update their eligibility and giving them their relocation voucher to find a new unit to move to.
Thank you. Let's see.
Yeah, so the next
Okay,
question
so there's just some comments in the chat. Go ahead.
Yes, but if the tenant doesn't move at the end of the lease, then you don't have any recourse. And at this time, that is true. But again, I'm going to give the same advice. Don't stop doing what you normally do. If you eventually do end up being able to go to the courts, you now have your paper documentation to show the judge what the tenant can't claim. I didn't know, or they never told me.
Perfect, thank you. Any more questions? I don't see any more comments or questions on the chat.
So I have a question. Again, I'm noticing that my voucher holders, it's taking them longer to find available units. I haven't been able to narrow down whether it's because there's just not enough available units out there, or if because of the pandemic, my voucher holders are just not diligent in their search. Are there, since you guys have have your properties, do you have available rentals at this time?
I have none.
Feel free to unmute yourself.
We've had
anybody else that would like to?
Yeah, we've probably had over the last, I'd say, month and a half, 2 months, we've had probably 10 rentals, 15 rentals, and we've rented them all except for a few. So seems like market is still strong for rentals, and we've got properties turning over right now. So I don't know, it seems pretty busy like normal.
Okay. Do you, the group here, accept housing choice vouchers? Because if you do, I would love to make encourage you to list your available rentals on our Go Section 8 listing. It's not maintained by us. Go Section 8 is a company out there that landlords can either, advertise for free or pay for their services. I'm not sure exactly what their services are, but that's the listing that our voucher holders look at to conduct their search for available rentals. It's gosection8.com.
It's gosection8.com.
Yeah, I'll type it into the chat box.
Thank you.
I don't know how to do this. Darn it.
There's a question here, Cindy, from Brenda. Is it legal to use the HUD occupancy guidelines in advertising?
Can you clarify your question, Brenda? I'm not sure, because HUD has at least from my standpoint, we have subsidy standards. So we determine our voucher payment standard size based on the number of people in the household. So HUD says that for every 1 bedroom, 2 people can be in it. So for a family size of 3, that would be a 2-bedroom voucher, whereas a family of 2, it would be a 1-bedroom voucher.
Do you know if they had a range, like 6-burner, disposal?
6-burner stove,
Okay.
range, yes. And a lot of this, when
Was it electric or gas? Or
it's gas, that propane. He was telling you about the propane tanks.
yeah, we'll be able to cover that.
Why can't I hear?
I don't think that was a question, was it?
I hear this.
There's a comment from Marnie. Does this apply to month-to-month leases?
I'm asking the question, does what apply to month-to-month leases?
Marnie, can you clarify that for us, please?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank
Oh,
you.
great. Okay. What I meant is that all of this, is this all applied to month-to-month leases? The same information?
Everything? Yes.
Okay, I didn't know,
Yes.
because there's sometimes it's a little different. Also, we're LCL Realty, and we have like 400 rentals, and our rental board is always going fast. We have like 3 on our board, but we've seen an upswing. People are starting to come out, and landlords are coming back, and I see that we have like 9 just coming up for the next month. So things are coming back. We see the rental is going to be strong again.
Okay, that's good to hear. I'm always going to encourage, if you have available rentals or if you can speak to your landlords, to, I know Section 8 has a bad connotation and a bad taste.
Yes.
Unfortunately, there have been some participants who have made this program, but again, I'm always going to advocate 99% of my voucher holders are upstanding tenants. They will keep the units, and we pay on time. On the first of the month, you will get your rent, unless the first falls on a weekend or a holiday, and it'll be paid the next working day.
Well, part of our problem with that is Section 8 has a lot of rules and regulations that the property won't qualify. An example, there can't be any additions, non-permitted additions, and a lot of times they were done over the years, so the property won't qualify. So that's how it goes.
Yeah, unfortunately, we did put that in because we would like to know that whatever additions were added were done according to code, so that the residents living in them were not going to be harmed.
Right, we understand that.
Yeah,
But most of the
I
time,
understand.
I think there's a big miscommunication. I think that the HUD program, Section 8 especially, really needs to put a update about the tenants that they're putting in are good tenants, and the pay is there, and because landlords just have a real negative connotation. We have a hard time selling Section 8.
No, I understand. Trust me, I've been doing this long enough. I understand all the negatives. We are an income-based rental program, so ultimately it's our client's income that determines how high or low of a rent we can approve for them.
That's true. Thank you.
Sylvia, it might be beneficial, especially since we're getting so many people on these meetings, to do another meeting with Housing Authority where we have some of the inspectors and so on. Remember when we went up to Riverside and sat down with them? They really made, everybody that went really felt better about using Section 8 and taking tenants from Section 8, because they really explained to us how they now go in and inspect and really screen their tenants, and it is much, much better than it used to be. So that might be a good Zoom meeting to do.
Okay, thank you, Debbie.
Yeah, my inspectors are in-house right now, so if you have another meeting, I can make sure that they attend the next Zoom meeting to answer your questions.
That'd be a great idea.
I can grab a couple right now if you want to ask them questions.
We have time. Let's see, there's a question here from Sandy. How much over the Section 8 voucher is the tenant allowed to pay if they want a home price more?
As I mentioned earlier, we are an income-based rental assistance program. So during the initial term lease, HUD regulation says that I can't approve a rent if their tenant share plus their utility cost is going to exceed 40% of their monthly adjusted income. So since everyone's income is different, it's hard for me to put a dollar value to that. But as long as landlords are willing to negotiate rent, we always will do the calculations up to that 40% and let you know what that price will be. And we only ask for that price for the first year's lease. After that, that 40% rule doesn't apply. You're allowed to propose your rent increases, and as long as we can find a comparable unit to match it to within a mile radius of your property, we most likely will approve that rent increase. So and as long as it's not COVID-19. Right now with COVID-19, our office, based on Governor Newsom's orders and the authority extended to local jurisdictions, we are not processing rent increases until the governor's order expires on July 28th.
Hi, Paul Wilkinson with Preferred Property Management. I have a question about
Best Buy renewal.
And my question is how long does it take for you guys to
We just bought that.
once they start the process of the application?
Well, for our voucher holders, once a completed RFTA, which is the request for approval of tenancy, is completed by the landlord and submitted to our office, we have to process it and get an inspector out there within 7 business days.
That's even with the COVID-19 stuff going on, you have to do that the same.
Yeah, we are. We're very fortunate in that the outside vendor we contracted with, he's local, and we just create a schedule for him, and he travels anywhere from his office in Eastvale all the way out to Blythe, California. And we've been able to meet our 7-day scheduling.
There's a follow-up question, Cindy, regarding if it's not approved for the rent increase, can the tenant pay the difference?
No. For the tenants are only authorized to pay what we authorize. If they go ahead and make the additional payments, they'll be in violation of my program, and they will be terminated from the program.
Thank you.
And then I think there was a question before that, does rent control regulations apply to 1 to 4 unit rentals? Unfortunately, I don't have the answer to that question. In Riverside County, we don't have
Vicki, did you have a question?
I do. Is there something in place where you have an existing tenant and due to COVID-19, they are unable to receive unemployment, any type of financial assistance? Will Fair Housing step in immediately to people in need in that situation?
I'm not sure if I heard the question completely. So if I understand correctly, there's a tenant who has no income whatsoever, can't qualify for any type of unemployment or other assistance program. The question was, is if Fair Housing will step in?
Yes, I mean, Fair Housing Authority will step in for.
Oh, you mean my? You mean my agency, if my housing authority would step in and help them pay their rent. The housing authority, unfortunately, we don't have that type of assistance. Our voucher program says that everyone who's interested in the assistance must first apply onto the waiting list. And once our agency has available vouchers, we do a selection from that waiting list. However, last week, I believe the Board of Supervisors did announce that there has been funding received for the County of Riverside to help with those types of situations. They're putting together everything, and we're hoping that that program, that grant funding becomes available on July 1st. There has been 2 agencies that are tapped to administer that rental assistance program. Here in the western part of Riverside County, it is United Way. And in the eastern part, the Coachella Valley area, it is Lift to Rise. So as soon as we get more information, I'd be happy to share it with you, so you can share it with your residents.
Yes, because it's a special situation where she was actually receiving income from the reservation and for her grandchildren that she cared for. So once COVID-19 went into effect, she is no longer the immediate person to receive money indefinitely. So she did it for 7 years, and now she has no source of income. So it's United Way. Once you get that information on how to apply, what to do, you'll pass it on to Sylvia so we can provide that to that particular tenant.
Correct. And if you want to go ahead and let that particular tenant know to call the 211 information line, again, that's a larger grant funding that will become effective July 1st. There's still some agencies or companies out there that have their own grant funding. 211 is the best resource to call right now to see if there's any more immediate assistance before July 1st.
Yeah, you do realize that, well, I don't know if it's like that now. I did provide that information to this tenant before, and it just rung busy forever. They could never get through. Is that still occurring now?
The 211 line was too busy. It was not going through.
It's not going through.
So I haven't heard that feedback because I get a lot of those calls too when they're calling here looking for assistance, and I haven't received callback saying that the 211 line wasn't available.
Okay. Yes, it just rung and rung, and that's when COVID-19 first occurred. So I believe a lot of people were calling then, but I will tell her to definitely try that again. Okay. Thank you.
There was a question asked about, so a tenant is not allowed to pay over the Section 8 voucher limit. For clarification, we have payment standards for each bedroom size. For example, a 1-bedroom is at $1,084, a 2-bedroom's at $1,355, 3-bedroom $1,888. Those are our voucher payment standards. If a voucher holder's income is sufficient enough and it's not over their 40% of monthly adjusted income for their tenant share and rent, then yes, they can afford a rent that is above our voucher payment standard amount. And then the next question after that is, what is the process of termination or non-renewal lease during COVID-19? Adding to the previous question for Section 8 tenant for tenant with, so for my voucher program, the termination process, non-renewal of lease, we still follow the same one that was pre-COVID-19. If your tenant has been in place renting from you for a year or more, it requires a 90-day advance notice that you're terminating that lease or not renewing that lease. And then serve your tenant with a copy to the housing authority.
And how soon do you have to know if we desire to increase the rent on a current tenant that is receiving or have the Section 8 voucher?
Okay. that 90-day is very popular with HUD. So if you plan on increasing the rent, if they've been in residence for a year or more, we require a 90-day advance notice. But again, until the governor lifts the order expires on July 28th, our agency is not processing or accepting any rent increases at this time. The reason for that is, in the past, if we are able to approve the higher rents, we inform both parties, the tenant and the landlord, of what those new rent amounts are going to be. If the voucher holder themselves feels that their new tenant portion is too expensive, they have the option to give their own notice to vacate at that point. With the current safer at home order, it's not as easy of a decision for tenants to make. So in alignment with that, that's why we decided not to process or approve any rent increases during this time.
Okay, so if we receive the annual letter that we'll receive, that we normally receive from you, stating, giving us the breakdown of what the tenant will pay or what the voucher will pay, and it's effective from, 2020 through 2021, we're not able, even if the I guess the moratorium was lifted on July 28th, we're not able to make any changes until after that has expired, correct?
No, that's not true. Again, the letters that you're receiving from us, those are just our normal rent change notices. The housing authority is not a party to the lease that you signed with, or rental agreement that you signed with your tenant. So our rent change letters does not extend or add to your agreement. That's just part of our annual recertification process. We're scheduled to complete their annual recertification effective July 1st, and they're not due until another recertification until July 1st of 2021. It doesn't say landlords have to keep their rents at that amount.
Okay, all right. Well, that's excellent. That's good to know. We did have that situation. And we were led to believe, oh, we got the letter, you need to do this prior to July 1st. But I will make sure to pass that information on. Thank you.
No problem. So Kimberly Palmer asked, for a tenant that has a 6-year lease terminating 8/1, do I need to give them extended notice to terminate the lease? So just to clarify, it's not a lease that was for a period of 6 years. They've just been on a yearly lease for the past 6 years.
Actually, it's 6 months, sorry. It was 6-month lease. They just moved in like at the beginning of February.
Okay. Again, the eviction moratorium doesn't cover that. Once a lease term expires, if it was my voucher holder, we require I don't know, we don't usually deal with any lease terms less than a year. So
that's why
I don't know if state law has other conditions that cover a lesser term lease.
Okay, thank you.
When you receive that packet from Housing Authority to complete for the applicant, at that time, that's determined if you will pay all of the rent. We get that afterwards, once we complete that packet, to know what the tenant will pay or if you will pay it all. That will have to be processed first for us to know that, correct?
Correct. We can't determine the rental portion share plus the housing assistance until we receive that completed packet.
And then it's a little higher than what you recommend for that size property in that area. Will you let us know? And at that time, we can determine if we're going to meet what the amount that you require.
That's correct. Once the Housing Authority receives the completed RFTA packet, we complete our rental calculations to determine what the share of the rent is for the tenant and the Housing Authority. And also we do our rent comparison study. If it turns out that the asking rent is too expensive because it exceeds our voucher holders' 40% of monthly adjusted income, or our system can't find a comparable price to match that asking rent, we will contact the landlord directly to let you know. If it's too expensive for the tenant, we ask if you're willing to lower the rent. If we can't find a comparable unit, we ask the landlord, do you have comparables within a 1 mile radius of that property to provide to us so that we can add it to our system?
Process take, and how long does it take for the landlord or the property management company to receive the first month's rent and the security deposit? I know in the past it's almost taken up to 2 months. What is that normal timeline once they've been approved, everything done, for us to receive what what the authority will pay, the housing authority?
Okay. Again, once we receive all the signed housing assistance payment contract, the signed 1-year lease, my staff makes it a point to enter that file within 30 days. The times that you've expressed where it's taken almost 2 months, then I would think that it's because there was problems with documents. That's usually where the extra time comes in, because we're trying to get corrected leases, signed contracts. Our housing authority typically doesn't pay security deposit unless it's a brand new voucher holder off our waiting list. Then we have an internal security deposit assistance program, and that is run by another department. And I keep asking them to please process it, within 30 days. But I've seen where it has taken between 30 to 60 days to process a security deposit payment. But again, you all have my phone number. If you have experiencing any delays, please give me a call so I can track it down and find out why it's taking longer than expected.
I'll pull your number, but that is good to know, because I believe for that particular person that they had a job, but the housing authority was paying their security deposit, the first month's rent, as well as their credit check, to run.
Oh, okay. So that's not my housing choice voucher program. There is another. It is administered here at the housing authority in our grants unit. It's a contract that we hold with the Department of Public Social Services. It's their CalWorks program and housing support program. So we do have staff that work in this building that pay the security deposit, pay the first month's rent, and pay their application fees. So again, I know who the supervisor is. Give me a call, and I'll be happy to walk over there and find out why it's taking them longer. They do have an additional approval process in that they have to get approval from the Department of Public Social Services to authorize those payments before our agency can cut that check.
Okay, because it looks like it's the same type of packet that I normally receive if I'm doing one for a housing. I will make sure that Sylvia sends that number. I think couldn't hear you, and so I didn't write it down, but I'll get it from Sylvia. Thank you.
Oh, my direct line is area code 951-343-5428.
What was the full name?
Cindy, and my last name is Hui, H-U-I.
Thank you.
Cindy, there's a few comments and messages in the chat. Did you want to take some time to look those through and see if there's any you can answer?
Yeah, I'm reading them right now.
Okay.
Okay, so the next question was, if a tenant's income does not qualify for the rent amount and the tenant can't pay for the difference in the rent approved by Section 8, can the tenant take in a non-voucher holder who is low income to help pay the rent? So for our voucher holders, they can't sublease any part of the property, and they can add other additional family members to their household, but it has to be requested by that person. So it has to be a family member that they want to add, and the person that they want to add will have to complete the housing authority paperwork to see if they qualify as well. Mainly, we're looking for we're checking their criminal background. Whatever income that new family member has will be counted along with the voucher holders. So if they meet our criminal background check, we look for no violent or drug-related criminal activity within the last 3 years. So if they clear that, then we'll be happy to add their additional family member. We also have one other caveat. Whoever they add can't cause overcrowding. So if they're already a family of 4 and they are eligible for a 2-bedroom voucher, adding that 5th person isn't going to qualify them for an additional voucher size, and a 5-member family may or may not qualify to rent a 2-bedroom unit based on the landlord's occupancy standards. I've had some landlords that says 5 people is just too much for a 2-bedroom. They're going to destroy my unit. So I hope that answers your question. Next one. Yeah. So my answers are always going to be for my voucher program, since that's what I know best. I did like Michelle Ross's comment. A longer notice is always better, especially during these times. 30 days can come very quickly, and it's hard for a family to, you know, pack up a place and look for another place to rent with just 30 days.
Cindy, how many of your clients do you have out there that are unable to find a home and they do have a voucher?
At last count, I probably have about 300 vouchers out there looking and searching. Now, the reason for that is they weren't always just, we continue to do selections off our wait list. So a good 200 of those are probably new voucher holders that come off my waiting list, and they're out there for a unit right now. We always have current voucher holders for one reason or another that are in between units, so there's probably another 100 that are current searching. But we always have about 300 vouchers out there looking.
No, I'm gonna hop in on that. I'm also a case manager at Community Mission of Hope, and we deal quite a bit with people in transitional housing. If you have anybody that is out there looking, you can, you know, feel free to send them our way. We're doing video chats with them right now and drive-ups. We're not doing face-to-face or one-on-one intakes right now, but we do have a lot of resources for anybody that you know that might be a Section 8 voucher holder with low-income housing in the community, and I'm happy to help any way I can with anybody. I can't guarantee I can place everybody, but it's what we do.
Oh, okay, that'll be great. If you can provide me with your contact information. Again, fortunately, most of my searching vouchers are not homeless out in the street. They're either staying with family or friends, but I know they're looking because their voucher hasn't been used.
Right.
But for those calls that I get where they are homeless, I don't know if you guys have been watching the news. Right at the onset of COVID-19, the state of California did provide a lot of funding for motel assistance.
Good.
So we have the county has a team where they are placing at-risk seniors and pregnant women into motels. It's called Project Room Key, and they've been in the motels for 2 months now, so they're looking at transitioning them out to more stable housing because they can't live in a motel forever.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, we are looking to see what areas are most impacted as a property management company, and we're trying to see where best to have our investors to purchase, because my new CEO is very community oriented. So that was one of the questions that he wanted me to ask, what areas that truly need service, that truly place your, your clients. So if you have something, I'll make sure to provide you with our email address. That's something we would like to know, because we do have investors that are buying. We do encourage them to buy, and we are more and more trying to provide housing for people who are in these situations because the rental market is so high now.
I'm so sorry. I was typing a response to the chat. Was the last comment a question for me to answer?
My office is looking for what area is most impacted that people are not able to find housing. We have investors that we try to, if they're going to buy 15 homes, we want them to at least do 20% in areas that are most impacted, so that we can also service the community, because we're community oriented. So I would like to know what areas you're unable to truly service a lot of your clients.
That's hard to say, only because based on my preferences right now, I want to say more than 50% of my voucher holders are elderly and disabled. So we're looking for more 1 and 2 bedroom units, especially 1 bedroom units. For seniors, they like to live in senior communities. And the areas where there's very few senior communities, or at least affordable senior communities, are in the areas of Temecula, Marietta, Sun City. So I don't know if your investors are willing to purchase apartment communities. And again, affordable housing is what we're looking for, because there are a lot of rentals out there. It's just that for my voucher holders, they're priced out of those because the rent's just too expensive.
So when you say they're priced out, what is it that they're looking to pay, like 800 to 1,000 is what you're saying?
For my very low income, 800 would be best. Again, my payment standard for a 1 bedroom goes up to 1,084. But to give you an example, most of the seniors are on a fixed income, such as Social Security. It's not going to be more than $800 to $900 a month. So depending on what utilities that they have to pay for that unit, even at 1,084 may be too expensive. For example, here in the city of Riverside, they have their own public utilities. So renters that are renting within the city of Riverside have to pay their own sewer charge. And in the city of Riverside, it's expensive. I know for my house, every month I pay $63 for my sewer charge. And that's not my gas, electricity, and everything else. My city bill is easily over $300 a month. So in the city of Riverside, there's that additional cost. So for low-income voucher holders, the rents of more than $1,000 is too expensive for them.
Wow, and I'm in Menifee, and we're a big senior community, and we haven't seen $800 on the senior unit for probably 4 years. The little 1 bedrooms are 1,000 and 1,100. The 2 bedrooms are 13. It is tough when we get someone that comes in with a voucher. We got nothing for them.
That's true. That's very true. So for our disabled clients, there is a mechanism called a reasonable accommodation. And if the voucher holder who is disabled can provide us with a nexus to their disability as to why that specific unit they must rent, we can approve an exception payment standard of up to 120% of our authorized of the FMRs.
Okay.
Yeah,
well,
but we need them to let us know what that disability is. We can't make it up for them.
Correct.
So some of the reasons are, their support system is nearby. The doctors they visit are nearby. Those are all nexuses to their disability.
Oh, that's great. Okay. that gives me something else to, okay,
Right.
possibly help qualify them.
It's really interesting. It's section 8, so I can't leave it. It's 8 minutes left, and I'll leave right at 11, okay? Okay, bye.
So I think there was one more question asked in the chat. If a voucher holder lost their job and they're unable to pay their portion of the rent, will HUD pay the tenant's portion? So again, we're an income-based rental program. My voucher holders know that they're required to report any changes to their income within 10 days of knowing about it. So definitely, please let the voucher holder know that they have to report their decrease of income to the housing authority, to their worker, so that we can, and send in proof of what that decrease is. If their hours got cut, give us those paycheck stubs or a letter from the company. If they lost their job entirely, give us that, that notice that they were given, so that we can make the changes to make sure to do the changes to the rent so that they can afford to pay again. Or in some cases, if they have no income, the housing authority pays for all of it.
I'm looking through the chat, Cindy. I don't see any more questions.
Yeah, me neither.
And we're approaching 11 a.m. Any final remarks that you would like to give to our group?
Oh, sorry, I'm writing. No, I just wanted to thank everyone for giving me an opportunity to speak with you and to answer your questions. We do want to encourage participation in our program, and I loved all the questions that you posed to me, and hopefully I did help clarify some information or some questions that you had. Sylvia, if you can email me that last chat comment, it was Kimberly Palmer's contact information. I was writing it down,
Definitely.
and then, yeah, that'll be perfect. But again, thank you. And again, if you want my inspectors to be on your next meeting, just let me know when, and I'll be happy to set that up.
Thank you. Definitely, I'll reach out to you. We do have our property manager meetings the second Wednesday of every month, so the next meeting would be scheduled for July 8th.
Okay, and just to let you know, my inspectors also enjoyed that last meeting too. It was very different for them. You know, they're used to doing the inspections, and they love the opportunity to be able to meet with the property managers, the owners, and have that face-to-face contact to answer the questions. So they enjoyed it just as well.
Perfect, thank you. And we still have a few minutes. We haven't actually had a property management task force meeting for us to just talk about property management. I did get a message from one of our agents if we were going to have a section for wants and needs in regards to rentals and property. So thank you, Cindy, for joining us, for providing this information. I am going to do a follow-up email. If you're not on my email list for property management and would like to be, just let me know on the chat and I will add you to that email list. Periodically, I will forward information that is important for our property managers. And I will include Cindy's information on there as well. But I would like to open up the floor. If there's any wants, needs in regards to property management, comments, we have a few minutes and the floor is yours. I am going to post something from Curtis Doss on the chat. So if anybody wants to reach out to him, you're more than welcome to.
I have a few rentals coming up. It has some tenants that are looking for places, because I know right now it's kind of scarce. I have 2 in Corona, and I have 1 in Menifee and 2 in Marietta, and actually, sorry, 3 in Marietta and 1 in Carlsbad. That's all coming to rent. And so you can always just text me, email me. I can put my information on my phone number, and then just let me know if you don't have anybody for them.
Thank you, Sandy. Thank you, Andrew and Nikki. I got your email, so I will go ahead and add you to that email list. And I will leave the chat open a few minutes after we adjourn, just in case anybody wants to write down any of the information that was shared, but I will be sharing the contact information in a follow-up email along with the recording. Also, if you have any suggestions for topics for future meetings, please email me or put it on the chat. We are here to service you, and we want to make sure that we continue to provide valuable information to help you with your business. And from this conversation, we have our meeting scheduled for July with the Housing Authority again. We're going to do a follow-up, and we'll have the inspectors on here. And that will be on July 8th at 10 a.m. And once that's confirmed, once Cindy gets that confirmed, we'll pass that along. But if not, we'll still meet and talk about property management. So I'm going to leave this open. If there isn't any last comments or questions, we're going to go ahead and adjourn the meeting. And thank you everyone for joining us.
Great job.
Thanks, Denise.
Thank you, Sylvia.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Nice seeing. At the beginning, I got to see everybody's faces.
Yeah, have a good day.
Thank you.